April Fool's Day, celebrated April 1st every single year all around the world. It's a day that we are very much accustomed to, being a day that we play little jokes on our friends and then yell April Fools in order to show that we were just kidding. So for today's video, we will be joined by Eliza Pancakes, who was voluntold to dress the part we need. I actually ran a poll on Twitter yesterday to ask everyone what townie they think is the biggest joker in the game, and Eliza won. So yeah. Finding the origins for this holiday was a little bit harder than I thought it would be, and you'll see why in just a minute here. So one popular theory was that April Fool's Day dated back to 1582, when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. Now, with the Julian calendar, the new year would begin on the spring equinox, which was around April 1st. The theory was that people either were slow to get the news or they just failed to recognize that the new year now started in January instead of April. However, there is actually a big problem with this explanation. See, the thing is, it doesn't really explain why April Fools spread to other European countries. And in fact, the Gregorian calendar was not adopted by England until 1752. But April Fool's Day was very well established by that point. So another theory came up for the origin of April Fool's Day, and it was provided by Joseph Boskin, who was a professor at Boston University. This professor said that this actually came during the reign of Constantine, where the court jesters were joking around saying that they'd have a better job running the empire than the emperor could. So one of the jesters, named Kugel, was given the opportunity to be king for the day. And during that time, he actually abolished that day and it became an annual event. So here's where this story gets a little juicy. The explanation was actually brought to the public's attention in 1983 by the Associated Press. It was printed in a ton of different newspapers, but it turned out that Boskin had made up the entire thing. Another possible origin of April Fool's Day was the festival Hilaria, which is Latin for joyful, which was celebrated in ancient Rome. It was at the end of March and celebrated by the followers of the cult of Sybil. It involved people dressing up in disguises and mocking fellow citizens. There is also the chance that it might just be kind of tied to the vernal equinox, or the first day of spring in the northern hemisphere, where Mother Nature fooled people with changing, unpredictable weather. So the origins of April Fools is a little bit iffy. I could look into details a little bit further, but most of the websites that I came across were saying essentially the same things. Other ones were passing what has been debunked as April Fool's jokes as like concrete evidence. However, I think it might be interesting to learn a little bit about some of the most popular April Fool's jokes of all time. Some of these are pretty wild, to be honest, and I will leave a link in the description for a website where you can see a whole bunch more that I had found. So the first one here is the Swiss spaghetti harvest. In 1957, BBC news show Paranormal announced that because of the very mild winter they had experienced, there was an increase in the spaghetti crop. This was announced with footage of Swiss peasants pulling out strands of spaghetti down from trees. So a bunch of people were calling BBC wanting to find out how they could grow their own spaghetti tree. And they were told to put a spring of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best. The next practical joke is the Taco Liberty Bell. In 1996, Taco Bell announced in a full-page ad that appeared in 6 major newspapers that they had bought the Liberty Bell and was renaming it the Taco Liberty Bell. Hundreds of outraged citizens were calling the National Historic Park in Philadelphia to express how upset they were. Everyone calmed down later on in the day when Taco Bell actually announced just a couple hours later that it was a practical joke. Next, we have the UFO landing in London, which appeared in 1989. Thousands of motorists were driving on the highway right outside of London when they happened to see up in the sky a flying saucer descending to the city. They pulled off to the side of the road to watch this happen, and when the saucer landed, it landed in a field on the outskirts of London where a bunch of residents called the police to warn them of an alien invasion. The police arrived, and one officer actually approached the craft. Turns out that the saucer was actually a hot air balloon that had been built to look like a UFO by Richard Branson, who was a 36-year-old chairman of Virgin Records. He actually had intended to land in London's Hyde Park on April 1st, but the wind blew him off course, so he was forced to land a day early in the wrong direction. In 1949, New Zealand experienced the hoax of a wasp swarm. Now, this was by the New Zealand DJ Phil Stone of the radio station 1ZB, and he had actually warned his listeners that a mile-wide wasp swarm was heading towards Auckland, and he told them to take these steps in order to prevent themselves. Now, these steps were like wearing their socks over their trousers as they left for work and leaving honey-smeared traps outside of their doors. The Auckland residents followed his advice, and throughout the day, panic grew until the DJ admitted that it had all been a joke. Because of this practical joke, every year before April Fool's Day, a memo is sent out to all the radio stations in New Zealand, reminding them they have an obligation to report the truth. Now, there are a ton more, but I'd be going on all day if I read every single one of them. So I'm going to end this video now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do intend to go back to talking a little bit more about mythological creatures. I've been kind of going on ones more themed turned to holidays lately. I'm going to try to do something next that is not holiday themed. So if you have any suggestions on mythological creatures you would like to hear about next, please leave that in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching and have a magical day. Bye!